Today, I am thrilled to welcome Henry Thomas. He is the VP of Customer Success at Tessian. And we are thrilled to have him here for a bunch of reasons, because if you don't know, Tessian helps legal firms detect sophisticated email attacks, prevent data loss, and stay compliant without disrupting employee workflows, which is really important right now, especially as we head into ILTACON with the pandemic and so much more. So Henry, welcome.
Thank you very much, Beth Anne. Great to be here.
I'm really interested always in talking about how firms can use good cybersecurity practices and really bring them into the everyday practice of law, because there's so much changing. So let's first talk very much about the working to protect client data from insider threats. What are you guys doing?
Yeah, of course. So the way that we see it is that insider threat falls into two categories. You have intentional data loss, and then you have accidental data loss. Now, to take intentional data loss to begin with, we often see that law firms will have lawyers who are sending IP and client data to their personal accounts. Now, this can either be malicious, i.e. you have a lawyer who's leaving the firm and they're going to go to a new firm and they're trying to exfiltrate client data or IP of the firm before they go to make their new role easier. Or it can be innocent as well, like, for example, sending data to your personal laptop so that you can print it. But crucially, both of those types of intentional data loss breach client confidentiality obligations and therefore need to be stopped. So that's that one area that we're focused on. Then accidental data loss, on the other hand, is not intentional by definition. Lawyers, as we know, deal with hundreds of different customers each year. And it can be really easy to send an email to the wrong customer with the wrong data, or attach the wrong file, a file related to customer A and send it to customer B. It's a lot more common than you think.
I do. Okay.
Well, there we go. You do it. I've done it before. You're not alone, Beth Anne. And that's what we help with on the insider threat side of things.
Just because a lot of our legal technologists sit in different areas of practice, practice management, KM, security, they're all over the board. Can you tell us what DLP is and how some firms are using DLP?
DLP, or data loss prevention, is about understanding and stemming data loss from your organization. Now, this type, like data loss of any type, can happen over various different mediums, but email is the most common form of data loss that we see for law firms. Typically, what we're seeing is law firms engage in DLP efforts to protect their customer data and to drive better security practices internally. And if I think about the law firms that we work with, often we're engaged because their customers are saying, hey, you need certain controls around where your data is going to go, or perhaps they've had an incident where they want to show to their customers that they're taking further measures to protect that data. Now, the thing is with data loss and data loss prevention is for many years, we've relied on policies to try and stop that. But it's no longer enough to expect that your lawyers are going to have read and abide by all of those policies. So instead, you need to augment those policies with intelligent software that can reinforce them in a non-obtrusive way and ultimately allow you to reach those client commitments. And that's kind of where we partner with our the legal firms that we work with. We essentially analyze behavior and then understand when non-compliant behavior is about to happen, remediating it in the moment so we can reinforce those commitments and policies.
We hear a lot that lawyers don't have time for something. Is this why data loss happens, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, lawyers are employed to be lawyers, right? They're not employed to be security experts. Then, of course, they're expected to comply with policies, but they may not take the time to understand, a lawyer that takes the time to understand every single internal policy and abide by it may not be the best lawyer because they're not spending their time on making money for the firm. So lawyers are absolutely aware of it, but we shouldn't expect them to be security experts. And that's where technology like Tessian comes in to help them stem that data loss without being experts.
Well, we talk a lot about being experts, but there's another level to that. There's an ethical obligation to all of this to protect that client data. And firms really need to follow that state, federal, international governing information. What are you guys doing about GDPR, EMA, CCPA? What are you doing to help with those endeavors at Tessian?
Please, this question's come up because this is Tessian's bread and butter, which is helping with these regulatory obligations. Let me take one example, but one that I think is very relevant to many of the regulations that you mentioned there. Misdirected emails, they're the #1 digital data security incident that is reported to the regulator in the UK. We spoke about it earlier. It's something that happens a lot more than you might think. and can have pretty severe consequences. Now, previously for law firms, this was an unsolvable problem. And what that meant is that they had large, whether it's general counsel teams, IT teams, risk teams, security teams, who were focused on identifying when it does happen, telling the customers involved, and then reporting it to the regulator, such as the Information Commissioner in the case of GDPR. Where we come in is we use machine learning to understand historical behavior and patterns for each individual, each lawyer within the organization, and then predict in real time when something looks unusual. So when a lawyer is sending something to Gary at Bank A, and our algorithms can detect that actually Gary at Bank A never receives information in relation to Project Zeus, Tessian can say, hey, something looks like it's unusual, and therefore allow them to remediate it. So what this means is Tessian works in the background for our customers and only interrupts when something looks statistically unusual, and we can prevent that data loss incident. And ultimately what that means is we save customers hours and hours of remediation, reporting obligations, and then really crucially, customer trust as well. Avoiding the erosion of customer trust, which is something that we're seeing more and more in the legal industry of law firms' customers expect them to have these controls and expect them to be able to show how they're mitigating this type of loss.
I think global privacy has been a constant conversation, especially with more people at home this last 16, 18 months. It's problematic. And I think that if we don't recognize that these are problems that are, as Tessian is doing, making them solvable to a large extent, we're not going to be able to move forward with any other innovation.
Exactly. And what's really interesting, Beth Anne, is that we spoke a lot there about the avoidance of a bad situation to avoid reporting to the regulators, for example. But in the legal industry in particular, what we're seeing is that security is really becoming that competitive advantage. When you are, when you're in a panel discussion, they're understanding who they're going to appoint. More and more, we're seeing security tools and security programs and security folks being brought to those conversations to say, hey, here's how seriously we take these things, and clients making a decision off the back of that.
Well, that kind of client feeling, if you will, that relationship that you guys are expanding on, is that something we're going to be able to talk about a little bit for ILTACON? What are you showcasing for us?
Yeah, of course. So we've got a lot of really interesting things that we're showcasing at ILTACON this year, both on how we're protecting law firms from data loss, which we've discussed a lot today, but then also advanced spear phishing and account takeover instances. So we're going to be showcasing both of those on our virtual platform during the show, and we're also going to be showing our new human layer risk hub, which allows us to quantify risk for every single lawyer and employee within the organization, so that you can understand who your most risky employees are and focus time and effort on reducing risk for those employees.
That's a really awesome availability for people to see kind of how we talk about phishing, we talk about, kind of lots of different ways that people are breaching security. It'll be great to see that kind of as a live and virtual event for you guys at Tessian during ILTACON 2021. Thank you, Henry, for taking the time with us today.
No probs. Thanks for having me, Beth Anne.